inflatable arm guy outside the car dealership. That's what that looks like.
That's a pretty good thing. I saw the guys like, wow, 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 like that.
All right, my brothers, welcome, welcome, welcome. So excited to be here. Mr. Weber's in the house, Alex, and then I got Jim Benson in the house today because we're talking about sex. That's right. We're gonna do some sex talk, the kind of thing that a lot of guys don't like to talk about or share publicly. And it's a good thing you're listening and not on the live call, because I don't know what Jim's going to ask Alex and I. We might have to get really vulnerable here, but I guess we're open to it. But I just want to, Jim, welcome you into this kind of field with us, and I really want to thank you for being here.
Sure, good to be with you guys. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, man. And so, look, you've been doing this work for how many years? 15 or 20 years, right? You've been.
Yeah, I mean, I've been teaching Tantra since 2003, but more coaching individual guys like 2007, something like that.
Right. And a little fun fact about Jim, I just have to share this. But in a previous life, Jim was a world champion Frisbee. What was it? You were freestyle?
Yeah, freestyle.
World champion?
Yeah.
Badass, man. Badass. All right. So we all have these different lives, we all get that, but we're here to talk about the main topic right now, which is sex. And I kind of wanted to start this out with a question, and then we'll free flow from there in terms of the issues that you help men deal with, right? For the last 20 years, it sounds like you've been doing this work. I'm just curious if things have shifted from when you first got into this into kind of like the issues sexually that men are dealing with now, or is it that, typically from your experience, we tend to be dealing with the same sexual challenges kind of in the quiet by ourselves, or has there been an evolution of that based on the modern world that we're living in? What are your thoughts?
It's a good question. And I think that I'm not sure that I could draw a curve for what I've experienced, but I think it's almost flat. So when I first joined a men's group in 91, something like that, my very first men's group, I was going in with sexual issues. Like I had a lot of problems. And it turns out that most of the guys in that group had some kind of sexual issue coming up. And so I just resolved to myself that when I started figuring this out, what's going on with me, I would come back and offer it to other men. So when I first started working with guys, there were a lot of issues around erectile dysfunction, which I like to call erectile awareness these days, because it's really like, what does your cock really want to do right now, as opposed to what you think it should be doing. And then early ejaculation is another issue for guys, so-called premature ejaculation. Dave Chappelle says I ejaculated right on time. He's like, there was nothing premature about that. So those are the main issues that come up. And actually, maybe the biggest one would be performance anxiety. So guys who are just in their heads, or they're struggling because they have this strategy or an idea of what they think is going to work in the bedroom, and then it fails, and then they feel like a failure. So there's a certain level of collapse and anxiety that a lot of guys have. And I have to say that it's pretty much been the same since I started doing the work. Like those are the big three that guys come up with.
So a lot of physical stuff, like basically like this is like performance, like guys are struggling with erectile dysfunction or erectile awareness, or the other two that you mentioned. It's really like guys want to get better at sex in bed, and we're dealing with these things that have physical kind of repercussions to them. And that's pretty much like the same thing that you've been seeing over the last 20 years that guys are dealing with when it comes in the sexual.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly been pressures on guys to perform. So there's a whole, that's why they call it performance anxieties, because the guy feels like he has to perform, and he can't just be present in the bedroom with the partner. And there are a lot of things that keep him from doing that. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that's physical or not. It's probably biochemical, emotional, there's something going on there. It's not like he has to go see a urologist necessarily.
Right.
There's a lot of factors that are there. Emotional, even you could even say cultural oppression. I mean, if you think about how men have to show up manly in the bedroom at the same time, they don't want to offend anyone, or get caught in being in part of the Me Too movement, where, oh man, he was abusing me, he shouldn't have smacked me on the butt like that. Mm-hmm. And but the last girl he was with was like, hit me on the butt. So it's confusing. There's a lot of confusion out there for men on how to be sexual with a woman or with another man. I mean, we're talking cisgendered hetero folk here. So,
I mean, are the solutions universal? Like, do you do the same thing, that helps guys? Like, or is it like you really have to go one-on-one? Like, actually, for this guy, it's cultural. For this guy, he has some mommy and daddy issues. For this guy, he actually has some physical stuff going on. or is there some baseline that you found in all these years? That's why I brought you on. Like, you've been doing this for so long. It's like, is there a baseline by which, most guys will say, there's a healthier version of my sexuality that I can bring out, and there's things that I could be doing to activate that or kind of enhance it? Like, or is it just all individualized?
I'd say that there's a way where I would go through each guy that I talk to and see where he stands with his physical life. Like, is he working out? Is he flexible? Does he do any kind of pelvic floor exercises? Is he, overweight? What's his diet like? So there's some basic physical things that I kind of check in with guys. And then what are they doing in terms of their ejaculation frequency? Are they having regular sex? Are they masturbating to porn? Like, what are they doing in their sex life right now? So that's a physical component. I kind of go through a little checklist with guys, and then I find out where they're at emotionally. Was there some abuse that happened to them in the past that they're carrying with them? Did their last partner kick them out of the door saying, "You're a lousy lover," and that rings in their head every time they get into bed with a new woman? So what's happening emotionally? And then that kind of segues into mentally. How do you approach sex from a mental perspective? Do you think about the problems that are going to be coming up, or do you come in with confidence and feeling like, I got this handled? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I go in and check. And some guys are like great in the physical area, really weak in the emotional, and really weak in. You can see this kind of there's a spectrum for each guy.
Right. And I'm just like curious. Sorry, Alex, I don't know if you want to pop in here, but I want to ask one other question as we're kind of setting the stage here. Yeah. So in terms of like outcomes of this, I mean, because the way that I think about this, and you and I have done a lot of work together. We've hung a lot. We've been in men's groups together. The sex issue is deep. There's this framework around the sex energy itself is the most powerful energy. I mean, it's the energy that gives us life, right? It's the energy that, we shoot something out of our body that creates life, right? Into another human who's wired differently that can together create an actual life. It's like this extremely powerful foundational energy force, right? So it feels like what you're dealing with, like your level of coaching is like so foundational and like actually so potent and so powerful. And yeah, like there's outcomes like, I want to get better in bed. Like there's these little things that we want, but I'm just curious how you navigate kind of the bigger game here, like the bigger part of this, which is, man, that energy is like massive. That energy is powerful. Like you help guys learn how to use it more consciously, like where does it go? Because you've been doing this for so long. I'm just curious.
Well, there's a lot I could say about this.
Yeah.
Certainly changes you make in the bedroom have an effect outside the bedroom, right? As you might imagine, if you feel suddenly like you're a more powerful lover, you're more capable, you can last as long as you want. Maybe you could even have multiple non-ejaculatory orgasms with a partner. Mm-hmm. So when you're having those feelings, you feel like you walk through the world a little differently. It's different when you go into a business meeting. You just feel like you got it going on. So it has that effect. And at the same time, there's some fundamental things that men need to take care of in order to make those changes. So for instance, learning about self-love. And a lot of times that's hard. Guys are like, yeah, self-love, blah, 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 blah. But there's a certain way that if you're caring for yourself and you're putting yourself first, not in a selfish way, or maybe a self-loving way, but not selfish, not a taking way, but you're just prioritizing your needs. You're not a nice guy who's just going to be a doormat and let people walk all over him, or whatever you want to do tonight, honey, that's fine with me. It's like, no, I'm going to assert myself in the world, even though the culture may not support you in that. So self-love is really important. Knowing your own body is really important. Like, how is your body working, and what is it capable of ultimately? And then knowing your own emotions, like being able to take responsibility for your own emotional state and the choices that you make emotionally, and how you express that. So all of those are keys to guys making lasting changes in their sex life.
Okay. And let me ask you a question, brother, because, I've never really got into this with you, but this whole non-ejaculatory orgasm, before we get to the multiple part, let's just talk about one non-ejaculatory.
Be remiss to not unpack that one. I made a little note here of, I think.
And Alex, you really got to put your mic up. You got to put your mic up closer, brother.
I think any listener would want to hear on that too, because that's an Easter egg that we got to unpack right there.
It is. And we all kind of heard, well, Tantra, like this whole notion of Tantra, there's elements of this, like this idea of actually being able to put the orgasm inside. But I really need you to break this down for us right now. Like, why do this? Why learn how to do this? what are the benefits of doing this? It feels actually reverse to what the purpose of the sexual act is from a biological standpoint, right? Does. The whole point of it biologically is to actually reproduce. That's why we do this thing. But now we're actually turning it on the inside. And then we want to talk about actually how to learn how to do it. But first, let's talk about what the benefits are. Like, why do this? Like, why is this a good thing?
Well, can you imagine having an orgasmic pleasure response without an ejaculation, but that's you could feel in your whole body, like a whole body arousal and an intense feeling. And you didn't ejaculate, you stayed hard, and your partner's like, wow, did you just come? And you'd say, yeah, and I can keep going. And you wouldn't have ejaculated inside of her, but you'd have the full body response of that. And just so think about your partner, like if she could have a man who does that with her without going limp in another minute, and she's like, woohoo, can we ride on that roller coaster again, big guy? And you're like, yeah, how many times you want to go? So it becomes a thing that where if you're resonating at the orgasmic frequency and she starts to resonate that way, she's going to start having orgasms too. From penetration, not necessarily you reaching around and rubbing her clit.
I keep picturing holding in a sneeze, and I don't think that's what this is. So
no, it's true that because if you learn some techniques like Mantak Chia, they're like grit your teeth and roll your eyes heavenward and clench your fists and make a sound that's like that's the look of somebody who's trying to keep from ejaculating. What I'm talking about is you're going to let the energy flow. You're letting it flow through your body. You're creating new channels for the energy to flow. So instead of coming out in an ejaculatory squirt, it moves up your body and goes up to your heart, it goes to your throat, comes up your top of your head. So you're having this full body orgasmic response, like something like that. Or
so it feels different. The actual feeling of ejaculation is the same, but it's different because it's in your whole body, is what you're getting at.
There's two different kinds. I would say there's two different kinds that I track for guys. There's the one where it feels like the contractions in the pelvic floor are the same. It's pulsing every second or so, a little less than that. Just nothing's coming out. No ejaculate is coming out. So in that case, it does feel like you're having an ejaculatory orgasm. And then there's what we could call the energy orgasm, which is this thing that starts to move up through your body. And it causes you kind of have to surrender to it. It's not something you can make happen. You let it happen through you. And that's a different kind of orgasmic experience. And then there are people who can blend those two together. You get the pulsing thing, and then you get the energy thing.
Inflatable arm guy outside the car dealership. That's what that looks like.
That's a pretty good thing. I saw the guys like, wow, like that one.
You know what I love about this? It's like, and for the guys that are listening to this, I mean, there's going to be guys that have experienced this or played with it. There's going to be guys that might have heard of it and haven't done anything. There's going to be guys that have never even heard of anything, think this is the craziest thing that they ever heard. But what I love about this is, just the idea that there's different ways to look at something that we are brought up as, at least in the Western culture, something that is just, so this is how it works. You're going to fuck, you're going to come, you're going to leave. It's kind of like rinse, repeat, that's what we do. And just the idea that there's a very different experience that you can have, is so fascinating to me, sexually, and I'm just wondering, so it feels as if part of the benefit is real quick, logistically, after you have these non-ejaculatory orgasms, is there ever a point where you do feel you need to release the energy? Or does it just, can you just stop and it never actually comes out, right? I'm just wondering, do you ever have to release it even at the very end?
You don't have to do anything. I mean, there's no requirement that you do that. And I would say some guys like to have a final ejaculation, to complete. And other guys are fine after 2 or 3 or 10 of these non-ejaculatory orgasms to walk away and be like, that's good, I'm done. I can't take anymore. My abs are hurting so much from this whole, energy thing moving through me.
Your abs are hurting so much from the waves of euphoria.
From that, whatever these waves are.
How do you even begin teaching someone how to do this, right? So I'm just curious, how do you start with somebody that is it sounds good, brother. I'm curious to learn how, and I know you just went to it. You got to talk to them a little bit. You got to go through them. You mentioned before something around doing some pelvic floor exercises, which sounds to me like bringing more awareness to that physical area of our bodies. What is in general, if you can walk us through the process of how let's say someone comes to you, I want to learn how to do that. Somebody listens, I want to learn how to do that. What do I do, Jim? Teach me how to do it. Just give us the framework for where you learn how to do that.
Well, buy my program, Todd, for $197. You and your friends can all experience the joy of both the orgasm. Okay, but if I'm coaching a guy right at the beginning, I'll say the first thing you do is check to see what your status is on your pelvic floor. Massage your pelvic floor, massage your body. Are you tight there? Do you feel like a muscle that's being tensed all the time? Are you flaccid there? Does it feel like all mushy? Is it toned? Which is really what we're looking for. We're looking for tone in the pelvic floor. So that's a place to start. And then next is how flexible are your hips? How loose are your hips? Because there's a whole hip movement that comes with this practice. And are you fluid and flexible in your hips? And then it's like, what are you doing for breath? What are you doing with your breathing? And so many guys, think about when you learn to masturbate as a kid or a teenager, that a lot of the ways you got there was by holding your breath or by tightening your leg muscles. Like you create a lot of tension. And then you're able to get to your ejaculation, usually quickly, because you want to get it over with before mom knocks on the door or, someone comes walking in. How quick can I ejaculate, right? So you kind of set a pattern for early ejaculation when you were a teenager. So I want to deconstruct that so guys are more relaxed and they're feeling more in their bodies rather than in some kind of a sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight energy. It's more like, I'm going to relax. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to learn how to surrender and open myself. I'm going to learn how to receive. Those kinds of things are really important for guys learning to have multiple orgasms. And it's really hard if you're in a male body and you've been driven by purpose and goals for so long, because it's kind of a goalless goal. It's kind of like a surrendering, letting go. It's the open hand. It's all these things that are not like, I'm headed for, I'm going to go for my ejaculation. It's the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. So you actually have to learn how to receive and surrender as part of this process.
Yeah, and I just want to give a slight testimonial because I've actually done, so Jim's program, he have a couple programs, and I know you do coaching, but he's got a program called the Multi-Orgasmic Lover. Wow, very well named. Actually, it's big though. Like a lot of guys have taken that course over the years, I think, right? You've had like tens of thousands or more, I think, probably take that course over the years.
Yeah, more like 6,000.
Oh, 6,000. Okay, so you had a lot of guys go through that program.
Yeah.
And I took it way back when, just and I will say I remember doing the body massage, actually massaging my body and actually massaging some of those areas as you instruct, was really fascinating, just because it was giving me it was almost like I was blind to that area of my body. Yeah. And I'm somebody that prides myself on being pretty mindful in my life, but I was almost not aware of myself in that area, and I remember having some real changes in my sexual relationship with my partner, who's now my wife. Maybe that's why we got married, we really, it was good. I was I was more aware, and I didn't go all the way as far as probably some of your best students, but I went pretty far into it. And talk to us about Kegels, because, the Kegel exercise, I think, is something that is foundational in the work that you do. I don't think a lot of guys know what that is, but that's the strengthening of the pelvic floor, right? And I think that I found a lot of benefit from doing Kegels in terms of my ability to have more awareness there. So talk about that practice, if you can, a little bit.
Yeah, I think women are more aware of Kegels because of the work that they have to do on their pelvic floors, let's say after childbirth, or they learn to strengthen their pelvic muscles in a way men aren't required to do that. So there's different kinds of Kegels. I call them PC pumps because that's what we do in the Tantra lineage that I'm a part of with Margot and Nand. So it's the muscle that you use to shut off your pee stream, when you go to the bathroom, you tighten and relax that, tighten and relax, and tighten and relax, and just do that in a pulse, because that's actually what pulses when you have an ejaculatory orgasm. Right. So you're teaching yourself to have control or conscious awareness of that pulsing. So it becomes more of a voluntary rather than just an involuntary pulsing. So that's important. And then we do a squeeze and hold too. That's important for moving the energy up the body. So those are the two kinds of pelvic squeezes. Yes, Alex.
Thank you, Jim. I have a question. If any listeners listening right now and just kind of some of these 10 orgasms, do some Kegels, someone listening right now might do Kegels until 3 a.m. tonight. So what would be a introductory regimen so that someone listening right now could start this in their life?
Good question. Because if you go on YouTube, you'll see videos of guys lifting weights with their cocks and getting pounded in their cocks with, sticks. And I'm like, okay, we are not going that far with it. We just want a little tone on your pelvic floor, guys. So if you did 3 sets of 10 pelvic squeezes. Yeah, 3 sets of 10 a day. The most I ever assign is 60 a day in this program, which is not that much. I mean, their guys will do hundreds or thousands a day. They're just, pulsing their PC muscle all day.
I just did 80 right now. Are you kidding?
Nice. You could. It's great. You're sitting in the car. You're standing in line somewhere. Just do some PC pumps.
Yeah. So I mean, I love this conversation, and obviously, like, if guys are interested in this, like, by all means, check Jim works out. This, to me, I mean, we're laughing a lot. We're having a good time, but, like, guys, like, this is like one of those areas that, like, we just don't focus on that much. Like, it remains in the dark. We don't really talk about our sexual health, our sexual energy. We don't even really recognize that there are different experiences that we could have that might actually be better. I think we kind of sit behind this a little bit of a judgmental or cynical mode around something like this often. I bet you experience that a lot. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would bet that you do. But man, like, this is huge, like, to be able to, like, better ourselves, like, sexually. Like, Alex, what are your thoughts? I see you sitting over there.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts. I think it's, first and foremost, I think it's such a gift that you're giving people, because that world, let's call it the bedroom, can cause such suffering. And in essence, it's creation, as Todd was saying. It is sharing love. It's sharing a lot of wonderful feelings with someone. And so it really is too bad. And I've experienced that too, whether it was anxiety, like you were saying, or, and I think where I may ask some questions now that are very practical of, because a lot of guys, I think it's natural you start wondering of, like, gosh, what was her ex like? Or how's my size? Like, physical things that are outside of your control, that are also hyped up by society. And in terms of a guy's life, what do we take? One health class in middle school? It's like, don't do drugs, don't get pregnant, and it's like, all right, cool, see you later. But actually turning this world from, like, a car crash, hope for the best, to some confidence. And so I do have questions also. And one of them is about pornography, because, and I'm curious your thoughts on that with the men that you've worked with.
In terms of, like, a good thing, a bad thing, harmful, helpful, is that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm even just curious how it's come up, Jim, in your work and wherever that may take.
So if I get guys who are watching a lot of porn and ejaculating to porn regularly, I'll talk to them about it and be like, for this program, I want you to try something different. Let's talk about reducing your porn use. Let's talk about going on a porn fast. Maybe you don't do it for 2 weeks, and let's talk then and see how it's going for you. But there are guys who aren't using a lot of porn, and for those guys, I might even send them porn clips of women going down on each other that I think are really good, where I'm like, yeah, this is what you want to do. So I might use porn as an educational tool sometimes, but it depends on the guy. I'm not going to send that to the guy who's addicted to porn and is watching it every day. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm feeding that part of him that's picturing something with his mind, or actually watching something on the screen, and he's losing track of what's happening in his own body. So that's the biggest issue I have with porn. It's not whether it's moral, whether people are being taken advantage of, if there's issues with the industry. It's more like what's happening inside of your own body versus this picture that you're projecting onto, that you're watching. So I want to help guys feel themselves somatically, feel their own bodies while they're pleasuring themselves and not picturing something else. So that's an important piece of this whole process.
Yeah.
Because then they'll be more in tune with their own arousal levels. They'll be like, oh, now I know exactly where I am on this scale. I'm at about a 7. I got to back off. I'm going to do the breath thing that Jim taught me. Okay, yeah. Oh, good. Everything's chilling back out. Good. I'm maintaining control. So they're more in tune with their own bodies and not like, am I going to come? How do I stop it? Oh, baseball statistics. Yeah, I'm just going to think about that. Oh, no, that's not working. It's like, all that just becomes kind of crazy for a guy instead of him feeling his own body. And a woman can tell the difference between a man who is doing baseball statistics and a man who's feeling into his own body and feeling her.
We're not good actors.
You might be a good actor, but her animal body can really sense what's happening.
Great point.
I just wanted to ask you about something that we've talked about, and this about me, but I want to bring it here because this is like such a powerful idea around this whole notion of sex transmutation. And so I want to hear your definition of it, but the way that I first heard that term, which is the way that a lot of us first heard it, was from Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, the first like personal development book ever written, 1936. I'm reading this book maybe in like 1999. I'm like reading this book. I'm like, all right, I'm finally going to go on this path. I'm going to start doing some stuff. I want to build my empire. I want to learn from all these people that did it. And all of a sudden I get to like chapter 12 or whatever it was, and it's like sex transmutation. And I'm like, huh? Like, this is what he's writing about? Like, and I start reading it and my mouth dropped. And he starts talking about how the greatest men in history, the men who've had the biggest impact in the world, knew how to harness their sex energy consciously and use it for other things, like to create business. And it goes back to where I first started, like that energy is so powerful and so potent. And we typically just use it in this way, to have sex. And that's what we're talking about here. But what if you can really bring it up and use it in other ways? Does that at all come in play with your work? And did I define it right?
Yeah, I mean, I read the same thing that you did,
Right.
a few years earlier, but I remember reading that too and being like, whoa, sex transmutation, powerful. And then I just started thinking about some of the examples of the powerful man, like who would
Napoleon
cheat on their wives or, have it's like, is it really the guys who did the sex transmutation? Are they really the ones who were the most successful? I don't know. Is that true? I question it now. I mean, I'm curious because I think everybody needs to find their own path in terms of ejaculation frequency and whether you're choosing to do it with a partner or not, and whether you're going to go on a fast for a month or two without ejaculating. And it doesn't make sense to do some kind of universal blanket statement around sex energy. And whether or not you ejaculate. I know the Taoists talk more frequently about like, I only ejaculate once every 3 years, and that's to make a child. And I'm like, okay, have you read the statistics on prostate health lately? Like, it's not too great. So I think that each man has to decide for himself, like, okay, am I just ejaculating because I need to burn off energy and that energy could go into my business and my passion? Or is it something that I really need to do right now? I'm kind of topped out. I'm with my partner. It's a good time to ejaculate. Actually, it would feel really good. And I know that I'll feel refreshed afterwards. So you have to really, I think it's not a one size fits all. There's no kind of cookie cutter formula. Maybe that worked in 1932 or 36 or whenever it was. But I think we have to have a more enlightened viewpoint now, instead of just saying, every successful guy didn't have sex.
Well, I think that's wisdom. What's the longest that you've ever gotten, like, without having an orgasm? I mean, you must have experimented with this.
Yeah, maybe 2 months was as long as I went.
Did you notice a difference? Like, did you feel anything?
I think after about a week, I was like, kind of, there's a lot of intensity. And then I just shifted into monk mode. I was just like, monk mode. But I didn't feel like a lot of sexual charge. I just kind of went into this other state almost. And I was like, oh, I see how guys could do that. Just, go into a place of not wanting to ejaculate. But again, that's just me personally. And I mean, you wouldn't believe the spectrum I have of guys out there that I've talked to who are like, I can ejaculate 5 times a night, not a problem, and then other guys are like, if I ejaculate once, it takes me 3 weeks to recover. So it's like all over the map.
Okay.
Again, that's why you can't just say one size fits all.
How do you experience? So it's interesting. I work with some pro athletes, and a lot of what you're saying is really correlated. And I think it's interesting because whether it's golf or going in the bedroom, like what I'm hearing from you, Jim, a lot is it's a lot more about self-awareness and really being okay and confident and comfortable and in tune with yourself. And so my question is, how have you seen in the people you've worked with, yes, the benefits as they walk into the bedroom, but also spread into other areas of their lives?
How could being aware of your body in a more full and complete way not translate into some lifelong benefit?
Right.
I mean, I'm thinking that if you're able to tune into yourself internally and be like, okay, I'm checking in. Ooh, yeah, energy's doing well here. Where's my focus? Where's my attention? It's like, it's the same thing if you're standing up to hit a drive on the first tee. You're going to be like, okay, where am I checking it out? Right. Stance, alignment. Yeah. Okay. We're ready. We're good. Focus, ball, 270 down the middle. Like, you're just like, everything is going in one direction as opposed to kind of okay, what did I forget to do? Oh God, I don't want, like, you're not a head case anymore. You become more like an embodied animal. You're more in contact with your animal body. And that's where, I mean, the athletes, of course, are functioning at every level, right? They have to have sharp mental skills as well as being in their physical condition. But a lot of the mental capacities are about focusing. It's about bringing the mind to a point. And what do you want to accomplish? Right. And that's the same thing with these practices of feeling into your body. Like, what is happening to my sexuality right now? Where am I on the arousal scale? What do I need to do to shift that? How did that work? So it's like all that's happening in your practice sessions with yourself. So when you get into the playing field in the bedroom, right, you can now perform. I hate using that word, but you can now deliver. You can now bring it in a way that feels really good to you and your partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Yes.
I mean, I think it just goes back to, and this is why I really wanted to have you on here. And hopefully what people are getting out of this and are listening is that there's this whole part of ourselves, sexuality, that probably we haven't focused on a lot. Like, we haven't actually turned our gaze to like sexuality as a thing that we can look at and say, oh, actually, we can grow here. We can become more self-aware here. We can get healthier here. I think that for most modern men, it's just been this black box, and we learn stuff when we were younger, all individually, and then culturally as well, collectively. And then we grow up and we start having experiences, and here we are as adults, and we're just like having a sexual experience the way that we're having a sexual experience, and we don't even think about it. And what you're saying is that no, like, just like anything else, just like with how you work on your purpose, just how you work on your physical body, just how you work on your mental capacity and your ability to achieve, just how you work on all these other areas, your emotional intelligence, right? Just how you work on all these other areas, you can turn your gaze towards your sexual energy, and you can work on that and use it as a platform to grow, become better, more self-aware, right?
Totally. And I mean, what happens most of the time is guys come to me in an emergency situation. My wife's going to leave me if it doesn't get better in the bedroom, or I'm dating a new girl. She's 20 years younger than me. I'm scared about the first time we're together. I'm just like going over my clients from the past week.
Sure.
Like this is real stuff. And so it's not as often as you get somebody who's like, all right, I'm already good and I want to get better. That happens sometimes. I love working with those guys because it's like, all right, they're gonna use the best of me. Like, because I like working with those guys who are already an 8 or a 9. I'm like, let's bring it. Let's take it to the next level. And that's fun for me.
What happens with those guys? What happens with those guys? Like, what happens with a guy that isn't an emergency, but actually comes in? Like, what are the outcomes for him? I'm just curious. Like, like, is it even more accelerated? Like, where do they go?
Well, a lot of times they'll say like, well, I had this one orgasm without ejaculating 20 years ago, and I've never been able to, repeat it. Or they'll say, yeah, lasting long is not an issue for me. Early ejaculating isn't an issue for me. But I want to feel like I want to have some spiritual sex. I want to have tantric sex. Or I want to use all of me in the lovemaking with my wife or partner. Or guys are like, I just want to feel full confidence. I'm like 90% confidence, and then something happens and I can't get hard. So those are the guys that I like take up to the next level with multiple orgasms, for instance. Be like, okay, so here's where we want to go. We need even more body awareness. We need even more practice at surrendering and opening to a force that's greater than you, and that you're going to be less directive. You're going to be less trying to make things happen in the bedroom, and less strategizing. How much are you strategizing? So they're like, so like, good, let's get rid of that. You're going to see what evolves in the bedroom. You're going to contact your own dark masculine and bring that out in a way that has a positive effect on the woman that you're with. So in fact, that's what I worked on with 2 guys this week, was working on the dark masculine. So bringing in their, like, even when you just say that, like, bring out your dark masculine. Like,
is that bad?
What does that bring up in you? Like, what does that bring up?
Is it bad? Is that a negative term? I'm just curious, like, just in general.
No, it's like a good term, but it's been negated in our culture. And especially now, it's like, oh, you don't want to do anything that's going to offend anybody. Meanwhile, you have millions of women out there fantasizing about men doing bad things to them. Mm-hmm. Right? So how do we reconcile that? Well, you tap into your own dark masculine, you bring it in the bedroom in a way that you scale it up. So you see where her limits are, like what's good for her, what is really satisfying, and what turns into abuse. And if you are coming from a loving place in your heart and you're really connected and caring with your partner, it's not abuse. It's serving her. Mm-hmm. So that's a whole other conversation about tuning into your own intuition as a man in the bedroom. And that's when, if you're not strategizing and you're listening to your intuition, now you're really bringing it as a top tier lover.
Have you ever have you ever done workshops or spoken or gone into college sports teams or fraternities? And I'm serious. I'm very serious. Yeah. Have you ever done something like that?
I've never gone into college sports teams. No.
It's interesting. I bring that up because, again, this is something that I think as society, it's bonkers that we don't talk about it. And it's just like over there, we all know we're doing it, but it's, it's almost like going to the bathroom, and it's like, we don't talk about it, but every human being does it, or, and it's one of these where I bring it up because that demographic, and also, the female counterparts or however people associate, but that your testosterone's blazing, you're trying to figure out all this stuff, and kind of rather than making it, we're bringing it into a world where we can actually talk about it. And I think people will be a lot less reckless because I think there's you got a lot of big bodies being reckless, going after something that their primal selves, and so I think that'd be a beautiful thing.
I'd be curious about that. And I'm also curious about the liability with that. Like, I mean, of course, the guys would have to be over 18 to start with, and then they'd have to opt into it. It wouldn't be like, you're doing mandatory sex ed class with me. I wouldn't be into that at all. I want to feel like guys were choosing to come to work with me. And they were doing that because they really wanted to learn all the stuff they didn't learn and should have learned when they were younger, but our society has not given it to them. So I think that'd be kind of cool.
Just put that on the flyer. Want 10 orgasm? I think you'll have a packed auditorium with college dudes.
I mean, it's such a fascinating topic. I mean, it really is. And we got to wrap this up soon. So, you've already been kind of past the time, but we could go on and on around because it's like so fascinating, this massive world of sex that is like, I mean, it dominates. I mean, it's like as big as any other topic. And yet like the way that we do it as individuals and deal with it is like in this little tiny box, like you said, it's like the secretive little world that we all have that we don't look at, we don't know how to talk about it. We don't even realize that there's ways to work with it as a part of ourselves to get better and to grow. And I think that's like tremendous wisdom to look at it. Like, how can we start training the younger people so that way it isn't like when you hit 30, 40, 50, it's like this emergency. It's like, I'm completely messed up. And then you got to go to gym. How do we start to reframe it and bring it into the conversation? And to connect that with what you just said around that dark masculine. I thought that was really edgy what you were sharing, right? And especially in this world right now where it's like, you have to be so careful, like in terms of what you say, because, like abuse, like boom, like so somebody says one thing and your life could be over, like we see it now on social media, like, one thing happens, and I'm not saying there are bad things that don't happen. There are, of course there are, that, things are wrong there too. But I also get, to be honest, that there is an element in sexuality that has these darker elements that are also healthy, that is what it is and it always was. And it's like, man, if we stamp that out because of the way of the world, like that's kind of like limiting like the true ways we get joy, and fulfillment, right? And that's an edgy thing to talk about because it's like, I'm going to say something that might really piss people off, and like, and people might hear that and be like, whoa, like we got to be really careful. So I applaud you for even saying it here, and like bringing it up because it's just a tough subject. All right, to wrap this up, one last question. What would you say to any man out there? Like, what's your message around sexuality in general? And like the topic tonight really became more around like looking at it as a growth opportunity. Like, what would you say? Like, just say yes to it or explore it, or like what's your parting gift for people in terms of like one piece of advice or recommendation?
It's interesting because, again, to just give some kind of cookie cutter response, let's just try this. If you feel like you're more of a taker in sex, like you're just out to get your own goodies. I'm all about, ejaculation. If that's, it's step A, B, C, D, and E to get inside of her so I can ejaculate. So if that's the way you're thinking about sex right now, what happens if you start to include more heart, more caring, more compassion? Like look at your partner, differently instead of an object to be sexual with. So the opposite is if you're a guy who's like, being a nice guy and like, oh, please, I would just like a little bit of sex, please, sir, more, some sex, more, please. And you're just like, kind of a beggar with the bowl with the partner. And what you need to do to come into more confidence, more of that assertion, better boundaries, more fierceness, more directness, more passion, because it's the integration of those two that women really love. If they just get a guy who's all heart, then they're like, I don't feel his fire. I don't feel like passion coming from him. He's a good friend. He's kind of like, we joke about a girlfriend with a penis, but he's not the guy I'm after. And then if you're just that kind of more bullyish guy that just takes what he wants, they're really attracted to that, but they're not feeling safe. They don't feel like, he's got his heart there. So you want that good combination of those two. And so I would say, as a man, assess where you are in that. Are you leaning more towards the bully side or the wimpy side? And then build the other muscle.
That's beautiful advice. What do you think, Alex? Parting thought?
I'm thankful that you're doing this work. There's a lot of, so much of what Todd and I, why we find a lot of purpose in this is there's a lot of men who are hurting, and sometimes those are just hurt teenage boys who are big bodies. And I think the work that you're doing is really healing, and it's not only going to help a lot of men, it's going to help all their partners too. So thanks for doing what you do.
Yeah, brother.
You're welcome.
I just want to thank you for being here, my man, my brother Jim. You always give such. It's a fun conversation, but it's a serious conversation too, And we really bounced around it today. And so, just guys, start looking at your sexuality just with some awareness, right? I mean, at the end of the day, because I'm learning right now to do that, and I really appreciate you being here with us. And we'll give links to your course as well.
Yeah, sign up with Jim.
Yeah, sign up. I mean, getting me excited to sign up. So with that, we're a wrap for this one, and we'll see you guys next time.